The history of 18th century Pennsylvania is one of rebellion. We learn about the American Revolution, the Whiskey Rebellion, but here at Fort Loudon, one of the first occurred that you probably never heard about in school. Come on along. Fort Loudon was built in 1756 as part of a line of forts ordered by the Pennsylvania General Assembly to protect settlers on the western frontier of the English colonies. In 1758, it served as a point of protection for the Forbes expedition as they cut 200 miles of road through the Pennsylvania wilderness on their way to defeat French forces at Fort Duquesne. The British troops garrisoned here, members of the 42nd Royal Highlander Regiment of Foot, the Black Watch, were responsible not only for the protection of the settlers in the area, but also the defense and maintenance of their portion of Forbes Road, an important route west for men and supplies. It was garrisoned by at least a skeleton force after the war, until the British abandoned it in 1765 and the land was returned to farming. It was at the end of that short lifespan in 1765 that the event for which the fort is best known occurred, the Allegheny Uprising. I wanted to give you a bit of background here in the studio before we get to the fort. What is known as the Allegheny Uprising or the Black Boys' Rebellion has been romanticized as the spark of the American Revolution, even in the 1939 movie starring John Wayne. The fact is that the rebellion had little to do with liberty and freedom from British colonial rule, and more with a distrust of the merchants moving goods west for trade with the Native American tribes in the Ohio Valley. With the conclusion of the French and Indian War in 1763, the frontier was plunged almost immediately into Pontiac's War, a Native American uprising against the British treatment of the natives in the frontier area and their attempts to subjugate them as subjects of the British Empire. The violence of Pontiac's rebellion was not directed exclusively at the British military garrisons, but also at the settlers who symbolized the attempts of the empire to eliminate the Native American nations and their ways of life. While this conflict pretty much ended as a draw in 1765, it did give the indigenous people a chance to be major players in the political landscape of the 18th century. But what does this background have to do with the Allegheny Uprising in Fort Loudon? The British imposed strict controls on what items could be traded with the Native Americans as a result of Pontiac's War. Items that were embargoed were primarily implements of war: guns, powder, shot, tomahawks, things like that. But there are always profits to be made by smugglers, and prohibited items were sometimes transported through the area, hidden with legitimate goods. More importantly, the British were in negotiations to ease some of those trade restrictions, and to the colonists who had endured years of bloody raids by the natives during nearly 10 years of war, that was an untenable thought. So they took it upon themselves to try to enforce those trade restrictions, and maybe got a little bit too, shall we say, zealous in the way they went about it. Friction between the colonists and the British over this enforcement put the officials of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the middle and resulted in what is known as the Allegheny Uprising or the Black Boys' Rebellion. Now, I'm not sure what we're going to hear from the colonists today as to the effects of the Allegheny Uprising, which did happen a full 10 years before the Declaration of Independence. Even though it had little to do with the lofty ideals of that document, it definitely could have had some effect on the American Revolution. Right now, I'm going to time warp forward about a week, and I'll see you at the fort.
In the name of the people of Cumberland County, halt. For inspection, what? Of your goods that falls to us, as both the province of Pennsylvania have demonstrated their inability, and the Crown for that matter, to ensure that no warlike stores pass through the Conococheague to our enemy Indians in the Ohio country. Has someone here a pass or a manifest?
This is outrageous, sir.
You will hold your tongue, sir. Have you a pass?
I do. Show me a paper, be gone. We've heard about this.
Perhaps you should have chosen another occupation.
Perhaps we should just let us do our
Gentlemen, it appears there may
and
be
let us
some
go
illegal
unmolested.
warlike stores. Search these goods.
I object. What is your name, sir? The governor will hear about you.
Let him hear about it.
What is your name, sir?
My name is Justice William Smith.
Justice William Smith.
With magistrate, one of the magistrates for Cumberland County.
Great.
We found contraband.
Oh, this is no contraband.
Remove the goods.
Come on now, guys.
This is a larceny. This is outrageous.
This is in accordance with the law of the province of Pennsylvania. There is no trade to take place with the Western Indians of Cumberland County. The current act of the Assembly is abolished, and the Governor John Penn, gives his permission for the opening of trade with the Ohio Indians. These goods will be destroyed. Burn it!
Let's hear from Justice William Smith, one of the local magistrates who was insisting on inspecting the pack trains heading to the west.
What you've just seen is an example of the inspection of trade goods brought through the Conococheague territory for trade with Western Indians. As you may be aware, this region has been ravaged through most of the last 10 years by war parties, largely inspired by the French during the last war. And after that, as part of the conspiracy of Pontiac to further ravage the frontier. We find ourselves in an unfortunate position in that Pennsylvania has promulgated a law which prohibits trade with the Indians. Yet, you bear witness to the fact that packed trains of goods headed west for hostile Indians is passing through our country. Surely one would think that the government of the province of Pennsylvania would see to the prohibition of such trade, but yet it has not occurred. In addition to that, the King's Own Proclamation of 1763 prohibits trade in the individual colonies, His Majesty's colonies of North America, until such time as the governors of the various provinces authorize that trade. This has also not occurred. What are we to do? Virtually every family here in the Conococheague either has experienced or knows of other families where homes have been burned, loved ones have been killed, captives have been dragged off to the west or to Canada. Are we to stand by? Are we to offer ourselves up as victims of these atrocities? Or, as befits the rights of any Briton, any Englishman, we have the right to protect our lives. We have the right to protect our property. As you saw, we have no argument with legal trade goods that pass to the west, perhaps for the use of the Army at Fort Pitt or other forts in between. But here in the Conococheague, we will no longer allow, stand, or bear traders interested only in profit to move these warlike stores and place them in the hands of those who have done and can conceivably continue to do harm to the people who live in this region.
If you haven't already, this is a great time to smash that subscribe button. Okay, not really smash it, but go ahead and tap it, or click it, or whatever you have to do to it. Just subscribe.
Who is in charge of this assembly?
I hold that honor.
And you are, good sir.
I am Justice William Smith, duly appointed magistrate for Cumberland County.
Justice Smith, I am Sergeant McGlashan of King George III's Royal Highland Regiment. We have received reports of unruly mobs molesting traders moving through these parts.
There is no unruliness before you, as you see. Yes, we have indeed stopped pack trains that have come through the Conococheague. We have inspected their goods. As perhaps you are not aware, the province of Pennsylvania has passed an act abolishing any trade with the Ohio Indians. What is more, even the king, in his proclamation of 1763, makes clear that only the governors of the individual provinces may issue licenses to open the trade with the Western Indians. That indeed Lieutenant Charles Grant is in command of his soldiers and not the traitor Robert Callender, but it would appear to be otherwise.
Enough of this.
Calendars, make ready! Damn you! Fire! Take to the trees! Come to the shoulder after you're prohibited. Quickly, lad. Sergeant, we should drive them out. To the shoulder! To the front! March! Make ready! Freeze dead! Fire! On the road! Out! On the shoulder, lad! On your flank, on the right, on the right! What's the command, Sergeant? Fire them out! Make ready! Freeze dead! Fire! Prime and load! Islanders, fall back into the road. They're moving. They're advancing on us. To the right about. Face! To the front! March! Quickly! To the double step! March! Maintain your dress! Maintain your dress! Fall back to the tree line! Take cover! Tree line, lads!
I'm telling you, nobody actually died.
Maintain your dress, lads! Islanders, make ready! Three, dead! Fire! Unload! To the right about!
Look, they're only at about 65 to 100. Shoot taking some of those cannons if they have them there and shoot. It doesn't smell like
Fire! Right about! Face!
that?
Hold, Sergeant. Henry's not a coward. Justice Smith!
Give him back to us!
I will not parley with unlawless rioters!
So, Sergeant McLaughlin, it would appear this is not the finest day in the history of the Royal Highland Regiment.
Sir, you obviously have never been to Fort Carry-On. We have seen far worse days, and yet we may see them again. Regardless, we seem to have reached an impasse. We have ceased our fire on this unlawful assembly, and we have taken one of your men prisoner. He is wounded, and we will release him to you. Should you agree to stand down?
Release your prisoner, he shall stand down.
Bring the man forward.
Henry!
Man.
The man has been wounded. A surgeon is more than likely needed. We will release him to you, but his firelock, which was used illegally against His Majesty's forces, will remain in my possession at Fort Loudon.
The King's soldiers are not allowed to hold private property.
The King's soldiers have seized an unlawful firelock that was used against His Majesty's forces.
It goes back to Clause 39 of the Magna Carta. You cannot dispossess a citizen, a subject of his property without due course of law.
Due course of law is suspended when acts of insurrection are carried against His Majesty's forces.
This is
I
no
bid you good
insurrection.
day, Justice.
The reenactment we just saw was based on one incident of the uprising, the fight at the Widow Bars. The Allegheny Uprising went on for 9 months, from March to November of 1765, and even included the kidnapping of the Highlanders' commander, Lieutenant Grant. It culminated in November with the Black Boys laying siege to and firing on Fort Loudon, forcing the Highlanders to abandon the fort and retire to Fort Bedford. Since we've already heard from Justice Smith, perhaps we should also hear from Sergeant McLaughlin.
Because Croghan, moving these goods, moving them through military logistic chains, can go to the first fort in Carlisle. He can then have a military attachment escort these goods all the way out to Fort Pitt. But because he's trying to make a one-up on the market, he's trying to do this to make money and to get these goods out there before anyone else does, he decides to do it clandestinely. And that's when the Black Boys come in. They find these goods, they see them, they illegally take it upon themselves to search these caravans and to burn someone else's personal property. So they complain about us taking their muskets, their personal property. Muskets, by the way, that have been used against us, intended to kill, intended to harm, and they talk about us taking their property. We have taken it and we have stored it. They have taken it, they have burnt it, they have destroyed it. Thousands of pounds, approximately 10,000 pounds of private property have been stolen and destroyed from people who they claim to be their countrymen. We've taken one musket that has been used against us as a precaution. We have not destroyed it. They can still get it back should they decide to stop attacking military garrisons. And it's worth maybe a couple of pounds. Yeah, they're still valuable, but they're not valuable to the point of thousands of pounds of goods. Not only that, these men are working outside of the king's legal chains. When people come out, they are issued a pass, so that way they are able to take goods from wherever they're going out to Fort Pitt. They are no longer honoring them. those passes that are issued by the province of Pennsylvania, they are the legal passes. Justice Smith has taken upon himself that only the pass that is issued by a local magistrate, who, by the way, is not necessarily loyal to the king, but is loyal to the ideas of Justice Smith, are the only thing that they will allow to move through here. So in order to move any goods, whether they be legal, you have to go through one man, one point of control, and you are subject to his whims. So what he's doing is extra legal, as you say. Not only that, they're forming bands of brigands to inspect people. They are claiming that we are taking bribes, that we are being motivated, and they are lodging libelous and seditious claims against His Majesty's Royal Regiment. Look, if I was really taking a bribe, if I was really sitting back and kicking it on some merchant from Philadelphia, do you think that I would still be in the King's Army hanging out here in Western Pennsylvania? No. Do you think I'd be dressed as I am in shabby clothing that's been around for several years? Not really. We're doing our job. They are going above and beyond, creating a terror on the frontier, saying that we are going extra legal when they are in fact the ones attacking us.
Thanks for coming along today. Which side did you align yourself with? The British or the colonists? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, till next time, have a great week.
Economics have gotten well underpaid.
Ben Franklin at this time, he is actually in London because he is petitioning the king to make Pennsylvania a royal colony. I want you to think about that for a moment. Ben Franklin, architect of the Declaration of Independence, is in London in 1765, petitioning the king so that way King George III has direct control over the governance of Pennsylvania.